Hello everyone, we are from Group 3. My name is Fidaiyatul Milah, my lesson number is 029 and my partner is Rummanatul Alaniyah, her student number is 024. We are going to present about regional and social dialect. In previous section, we are focused on language variation in multilingual communities. Meanwhile, in this section, which is section 2, we are focused on language variation in monolingual communities. This topic divided into three subtopics. There are regional variation, social variation, and social dialect. An additional topic about a note methodology and conclusion. First, I will present first subtopic that is regional variation. Regional variation itself divided into international varieties, intranational or intracontinental variation, and cross-continental variation dialect chains. In international varieties, there are vocabulary, accent, and grammar differences in the varieties spoken in different regions. First, vocabulary, for example, in England, talk single parents, in Australians call them sole parents, and in New Zealanders call them solo parents. There are also different types in different places. One of them is clothes. The word tucks in New Zealand, tucks are what you women. Meanwhile, in Britain, tucks you might wear them to a formal dinner. The second is accent differences. You can read in example 2 on page 132. In this example shows that there is a different accent. The third is grammatical differences. We can distinguish grammatical differences within US English and British English. For example, US English use do you have, but in traditional British use have you got. Another example is US English use gotten, meanwhile in England use got. Let's move to intranational or intracontinental variation. In England, dialectologists can distinguish regional varieties for almost every English county. For example, Yorkshire, Lancashire, Northumberland, Somerset, and so on, and for many towns too. For example, in London there is a Cockney dialect which is quite distinctive with its glottal stop instead of T. For example, beer, not bitter, and butter, not butter. In USA too, dialectologists can identify distinguishing features of the speech of people from different regions. Different tones and even parts of tones can be distinguished. Within the Boston dialect is different with New York City, and within New York City, Brooklynese is quite distinctive. In New Zealand, there are greater differences among the Maori dialects than within English, because it reflects the longer period of settlement and more restricted means of communication between people from different Maori tribes before European settlers arrived. This map of England shows where different dialect words are used for the standard English word splinter. It was documented by Harold Orton's comprehensive survey of dialects in the 1950s. It shows that one word has thousands of linguistic features which vary in different dialects, drawn with isoglasses between areas where different vocabulary. Next, cross-continental variations, dialect chains. Dialect chains are very common across the whole of Europe. One chain links all the dialects. For example, in Scandinavian chain links dialect of Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish, so that Swedish and Norwegian in adjacent areas can communicate more easily than fellow Swedes from southern and northern Sweden. The second subtopic is social variation. RP, a social accent. RP is received pronunciation, and this accent is social accent because it is belong to highest social class, include educated people and members of English society, and this accent used by the Queen's English. In the picture shows that in the top of RP is an accent used by less than 5% of the British population. The third subtopic is social dialects. This subtopic divided into standard English, caste dialects, and social class dialects. Dialects are linguistic varieties which are distinguishable by their vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. The speech of people from different social as well as regional groups may differ in these ways. Standard English, just as RP is a social accent, so Standard English is a social dialect. It is the dialect used by well-educated English speakers throughout the world. In the picture, the flat top symbolizes the broader range of variants or alternative linguistic forms which qualify as part of the standard dialect of English in any country. It is estimated that up to 15% of British people regularly use standard British English. There are many standard Englishes: US, South African, Australian, British, and so on. Just as standard English, there is also non-standard forms, but sociolinguists use vernacular as an alternative to non-standard forms. Vernacular language contrasts with standard language. Vernacular dialect contrasts with standard dialect. Vernacular forms tend to be learned at home and used in informal contexts, so all users of the term vernacular share this sense of the first variety acquired in the home and used in casual context. Vernacular dialects, like vernacular languages, lack public or overt prestige, though they are generally valued by their users, especially as means of expressing solidarity and affective meaning. Next is caste dialect. Caste systems determined by birth and strict social rules govern the kind of behavior appropriate to each group. The rules cover such matters as the kind of job people can have, who they can marry, how they should dress, what they should eat, and how they should behave in a range of social situations. There are quite clear differences in Indian languages, for example, between the speech of the Brahmins and non-Brahmins castes. The Brahmin word for milk in the Kannada language is halu, while non-Brahmin dialects say alu. The Tamil Brahmin word for sleep is tungu, while non-Brahmin dialects use the word oranyu. In Javanese too, linguistic differences reflect very clear-cut social or caste divisions. In the table picture shows 6 distinguishable stylistic levels. There are 3 distinct Javanese social groups and 3 associated dialects. First, the dialect of the lowest status group, the peasants and uneducated townspeople, consists of 3 stylistic levels, 1, 1A, and 2. You can see stylistic level in the table picture. The second is the dialect of urbanist people with some education, consists of 5 stylistic levels, 1, 1A, 2, 3, and 3A. The last is the dialect of the highly educated high caste status group, also consists of 5 levels, but they are different from those of the second social group, 1, 1A, 1B, 3, and 3A.
Well, hello everyone, my name is Rummanatul Alaniyah, and now I'm going to continue our discussions with the third subtopic, social class dialects. Well, this subtopic relates to 3 features. They are vocabulary, pronunciations, and grammatical patterns. The first is vocabulary. While talking about social dialects, it means something related to social class or stages. The term social class here is a label for a group of people with the same economic and social status, which is based on their social prestige, wealth, or education. And the term status here is the difference or respect that people may give or not give to someone or a group of people. And family background may be one of the sorts of status independently of wealth. Social dialect research in many different countries has revealed a consistent relationship between social class and language patterns, which can be obviously seen in the use of vocabularies. So it means that people from different social classes may speak differently each other. The example here is the speech used in the 1950s in England. They distinguished 2 different speech of 2 different classes. They are U speaker, which refer to upper class English people, and non-U speaker for middle to low class people. The example of words used by the U speakers here are sitting room, lavatory, and bag, while non-U speakers they use lounge, toilet, and handbag. The second is pronunciation. The difference between Canadian and Parisian French are often not absolute, so that the speech of different social groups are distinguished by the frequency of particular features rather than completely different forms. So here is an example. It is an interview conducted by a New Zealand student who taped a radio broadcast of 2 elderly people's account of their childhood in Edwardine, Wellington, the capital city of New Zealand. The 2 speakers here contrasted on a range of social variables. So in the recording, it, it was analyzed to see whether there were differences between the speakers in terms of the numbers of the H sound they drop, which is called H dropping, in the word like house. So the interviewer here found that Marjorie Lee didn't omit a single H sound, while George Davis dropped about 83% of the H sounds which is occur in this interview. So the speakers' different social backgrounds were clearly signaled by the different proportions of these features of their speech. The next example can be seen in the figure 6.4. It shows the average of H sound dropping or a dropping scores from 5 different social groups in West Yorkshire and Norwich. There are 5 groups here from group 1 until group 5. Group 1 refers to the highest social group or the upper middle class, and group 5 refer to the lowest or working class. If we take a look from a linguistic point of view, it seems that the H sound or a dropping sound mostly pronounced by the lower social group. However, a person of group 3 may drop every H sound. So, taking the averaging may conceal considerable variation within a group. Well, the next discussion, I'm going to talk about William Labov's work, who first demonstrated the way different pronunciations indicating the social class of the speakers in a study of New York City speech. It was a linguistic interview to gain a range of speech styles from different social backgrounds and analyzing their pronunciations of different consonants and vowels. So Labov found regular patterns relating to the social class of the speakers to the percentage of standard dialects. The first one can be seen in the pronunciations of suffix ing or in at the end of the words, like swimming or swimming, which distinguishes social groups in every English-speaking community. The second can be seen in the pronunciation of R sound. There are 2 possible variants of R sound in English-speaking community, which is pronounced and not pronounced. In some regions, pronouncing R sound is part of the standard Prestige dialect, like in the Boston and New York areas. But in other areas, standard dialect speakers do not pronounce R after vowels, which is called post-vocalizations, in words like car and card. It shows that the higher a person's social group, then the more R sounds they produce. The next example is still about Labov's work, his experiment in New York City. He wanted to show that the pronunciation of post-vocalic R sound varied in the city according to the social group. So, in this experiment, he asked people in different department stores where to find an item which he knew was sold on the 3rd floor. Then he pretending he hadn't heard the answer so that people repeated their answers. So the result of these experiments showed that the posher the store, it means the more luxurious the store, the more people use post-vocalic R. The evidence can be shown that nearly half the socially superior supervisor use post-vocalic R consistently, and just 18% of the less successful salespeople did, and the stock boys rarely use it at all. The next discussion is about grammar patterns in social class dialects. There are some examples here, the standard and vernacular grammatical forms which have been identified in several English-speaking communities. There is a clear pattern to the relationship between the grammatical speech form and the social groups who use them. It means that the higher social groups use more of the standard grammatical form. In the example number 6, it is a multiple negations or negative concord. The difference here is that the standard English allows only one negative in each clause, while most vernacular dialects can have two or more multiple negations. Multiple negations is a grammatical construction which has been found in all speaking communities. They are very salient vernacular form and very frequently used in lower class speech than in the middle class speech. The next is about methodology used by Leboeuf in sociolinguistics research. So, rapid and anonymous surveys is one of useful technique for collecting a lot of data very quickly. And Leboeuf used this method when he asked, "Where are the women's shoes?" as mentioned in the previous example in the New York department store. Another example is the use of a street survey to ask people to pronounce certain words. This method allows the researchers to access features of the speech of a large number of people in relatively short time and can provide interesting clues about what is worth studying in more detail, but obviously it has limitations. So, though patterns of gender and age and sometimes ethnic variations can be detected using this approach, since we can usually guess these features when we meet someone, it is harder to be sure about the social background of speakers when no social information is collected from them, and the data is limited in quantity and style, of course. The last but not least is the conclusions. The way people speak are the indicator of the social backgrounds which can be seen in the features such as the variations, the grammar features, and the pragmatic features. In the variations, it is used as an indicator of language change in progress, such as in the pronunciations of the suffix ing and the h sound dropping, which is usually stable. And the grammatical features, such as multiple negations and tense markers, are also often stable. And last, the pragmatic features, it can be seen from the use of tag questions or like pragmatic particles such as which is indicate the social group of people. Well, that's all about regional and social dialects from us, and we're sorry if there are any mistakes or lack of material from what we have presented. And thank you very much.